Hello, I'm Kai and I'm here to tell you about Internet Protocol version 4 or IPv4 and DHCP. If you haven't already, then you probably find it helpful to check out the Internet Protocol version 4 presentation first. Now, it is possible and sometimes necessary for you to manually assign IP addresses on a network. But if you've got a large network, or if it's growing network, then you really need to consider doing this automatically, otherwise it's going to take up a lot of your time. The way we assign IP addresses automatically on a network is using something called DHCP. What's DHCP, you might ask? DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Control Protocol, and it's the way we automatically assign IP addresses on a network. When you're setting this up, you really need a plan, and the plan should be something like this. Decide on the size of your network is step 1. Step 2, from that decide on the class. Step 3, decide on the IP range. Step 4, fix the server IP in that range. 5, set up the DHCP IP allocation. 6, decide on the lease. And finally 7, test that it's actually working. Step 1, decide on the size of your network. So think about how many devices are likely to be on your network. Don't forget to include devices such as printers, routers, cameras, servers, etc., not just computers. Also, mobile devices too. Let's have an example. Let's say we've got a network. We think there's going to be up to 240 devices at one time, but at least 70 of those will be a wireless connection, and there may be more than actually 70 devices available, but no more than 70 will be available at any time. And this is because some people would either work from home or are part-time and they bring their laptop in to work. So more than 70 people do that, but no more than 70 at any one time. So from now we know how many devices we are going to need at any one time, we need to decide on a class. So you'd think, looking at the table here, that a class C, which allows for 256 addresses, would be fine, and it could be, but as it doesn't allow for much expansion and as networks tend to grow, in this case I think it would be best to go up one and go to class B, and then we've got some room for expansion if we need it without having to radically change things. Step 3, decide on the IP range. So we've got a class B network, so we'll use the standard private range of 172.16.0.0 to 172.31.255.255. So it could be anywhere within there. We'll just pick a range at near the bottom of that, so we'll pick 172.16.0.1 to 172.16.0.254. The reason why we pick that range is because we're not allowed to use the bottom range of 172.16.0.0, and we can't use 172.16.255.255. So we could actually have gone to 255 for the 172.16.0.254, but in this case we're playing it safe. And of course the subnet mask from the previous slide you should know for a class B network is 255.255.0.0. Right, so in step 4, we need to fix the IP in the IP of the server in the range we've chosen. So we've chosen a range of 172.16.0.1 all the way to 172.16.0.254. One of these needs to be the server. We could pick any one. However, we usually pick the lowest one. So let's do that. So in our case, we'll pick the server address as 172.16.0.1. So with our server sitting at 172.16.0.1, that leaves everything from 172.16.0.2 all the way to 172.16.0.254 for all the other devices. Right, this is the range we're going to use for the DHCP, so that's what we finally decided on. Another thing we need to decide on for the DHCP is the lease. Now, this is the amount of time that any one device will have the IP address that's been allocated. So you could choose quite a short lease, which would be, maybe a few hours, could even be less than an hour. You could choose that, or you could choose quite a long lease. If your network changes frequently, like you've got lots of people bringing mobile devices in, you'll probably want quite a short lease, maybe just a few hours, maybe even shorter than that, maybe just 1 hour or even less. Depends on how frequently people come and go. If your network is pretty static, most are desktops maybe, they're all plumbed in, then you could actually safely choose a much longer lease, maybe weeks or even months. Okay. If you choose a very short lease, then you'll get more network traffic. So, you would tend to try and pick the longest lease you think you could safely get away with. In our example, we've got people coming in each day, so we could choose a fairly short lease of 1 day. All right. This is a screenshot of Windows Server 2016, and I'm just showing you here where the settings are to change the scope. And here you can see the start address is 172.16.0.2 and the end IP address is 172.16.0.254. And if you go down just a little bit, you can see that the duration for the IP address is set to 1 day. Okay. So having set all that up, we need to test it. So if with our server running, we will fire up one of our client machines. This one has been fired up and we've opened up the command prompt and typed an IP config /all command, and this is the output. You should be able to see here that the IP address has been allocated within the range that we set up in the DHCP server. This one has gone for 172.16.0.3. That is in our range. The subnet mask is also correctly set up from the server. And you can also notice that the lease obtained was obtained on the 20th of January and expires on the 21st of January, almost exactly 24 hours later. So that means that could be available the next day. The other thing we do as testing is go back to the server, and what we can do is we can actually look at the leases that have been allocated, and this shows you that we can actually see the 172.16.0.3 client address being allocated, and we can see the lease expiration. If we had more clients that had been allocated IP addresses, they would also be listed here. And that's all. Hope you found that interesting and useful. Bye for now.